This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum and Tanya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward. Shane, let's talk about the newest TikTok trend.
You're going to have to describe it, inform me, and give me the entire spectrum on it because I am not on TikTok.
It's a new dance that I would like to see you try. Maybe we can get the girls together next time, and it would be a fantastic way to showcase your Terpsichorean talents.
I don't know what that word means. Dance and Shane are like oil and water.
Obviously, no, I'm kidding. And this is not a TikTok dance trend we're talking about. But what I want to talk about is the TikTok trend that we're seeing, especially among our Gen Zs. And now it's starting to stretch into our millennials. It's one of those places that you and I, as Xers, can really take something away from, especially as business owners. And this is the trend that we're seeing called loud budgeting.
I'm going to guess that loud means out and open. And I'm going to say that by saying loud budgeting, it means you're telling the world that you're not going to spend money.
That's a great start. In the past decade, we have had this trend of flaunting luxurious purchases. Usually, these luxurious purchases have been made using credit cards or by going into debt or using student loans to buy $3,000 and $4,000 purses and ending up in a hole that feels like you just absolutely cannot dig yourself out of. And this social media fad of flaunting luxury has just permeated Insta and TikTok and Snap and all of these places. You can't get on Insta without seeing people talk about high-end luxury items and vehicles. So the whole idea of loud budgeting is that people are starting to speak up about saving money and that it's no longer taboo to be able to say, hey, that doesn't fit into my budget, and not caving to peer pressure to go on an expensive trip or go out to an extremely expensive dinner that you can't afford.
I like loud budgeting, and it sounds like a trend that I would be very much in favor of. The reality of it is the world's changed, and we love as a society to tell everybody about what's going on in our life. The problem is that it hasn't been authentic. It's just, number one, student loans to buy a $4,000 purse. I don't even know where to start with that. But the fact that you've borrowed money in any capacity to buy something like that makes zero sense. But to then tell everybody about it and having to borrow money to do it is a lie. Okay, at the very core, because it's not authentic. You can't afford it and you shouldn't have done it, but you want to, quote, keep up with the Joneses. So you need to do this because you have some peers that are influencers and they are able to do it. I love the fact that there's a trend for the rest of us.
So this trend was introduced in late December by a comedian named Lucas Battle. It was a TikTok video that's been viewed over 1.5 million times. And what he said was, if you know any rich people, you know that they hate to spend money. So it's almost more chic, more stylish, more of a flex. It's not, I don't have enough. It's, I don't want to spend. And that's how this movement started. And I love that.
Yeah, the Shane version of this is that I don't need that. I have several situations as I was growing up. Some of the most wealthy people that I knew were overalls and drove a beat up pickup truck. One of the ones that comes to mind, he's since passed, is a gentleman that, bless his heart, he was a widower and his house was not always kept up. The yard was always not mowed well. And I wouldn't even live this way, me being pretty conservative. This particular gentleman was to the extreme of this, but nobody really knew it. Even when he got a new pickup, it was within weeks that one of his cows would have run into the pickup while he was out cubing or feeding, and he would never go get the dent fixed because he's just going to get another dent. But he would drive these vehicles, these trucks, for 10 or 12 years. They were always beat up. He owned right at 3,000 acres. He owned hundreds of head of cattle. He was worth in excess of $10 or $12 million easily. And I don't know that I've ever seen him out of a pair of overalls. If you were to meet him at a restaurant, at a store, at the cafe, and talk to him, you would not know that he had a dime. The money he had was probably a little bit of cash in his pocket. And he had a self-built, accumulated this land over time, and was just this, not loud at all, but from a budgeting standpoint, you just didn't know. And most of the people in my life that I've met that were truly successful and truly had been financially successful, you couldn't tell that they had been financially successful. You would not know that by talking to them or even by looking at them.
I learned that lesson working in a jewelry store in high school. A guy that looks very much like you were describing came into the jewelry store and nobody wanted to wait on him at Christmas. And I went over and waited on him and was really nice to him because you're supposed to be nice to everybody and, give everybody the service that they deserve. And he ended up buying jewelry for every female in his family. And that was the day that I learned the power of working on commission. But I had always been raised, you don't judge people by how they dress and how they act. You judge people by how they treat you and how they treat others. And that was a lesson that was learned that day in a dramatic way for me. But you talking about that reminds me of a gentleman that I worked for a bazillion years. And he used to fuss at me about how large my handwriting was because I was wasting ink. And he had the tiniest handwriting that you can possibly imagine because he was so focused on things like that. And I'll never forget, he and his wife split up and he started dating again. And he kept wondering why he wasn't getting second dates. And we were talking about this one day and I found out he was taking people to Shoney's. Did y'all have Shoney's in Texas?
We did. I love me some Shoney's breakfast.
Yeah, so he was taking women to Shoney's for iced tea and then using a 2-for-1 coupon. And I'm like, okay,
That's
on a
awesome.
first date, we got to do a little better. At least let them order the breakfast. Don't use the 2-for-1 iced tea coupon at the Shoney's as your first date. We've got to do a little better than that.
What we're doing here is we do need to separate loud budgeting and conservative from cheap. We don't necessarily need to be cheap. We bought an agency one time from an older agent, and it was comical. He itemized all of his office supplies on the schedule of things that we were buying when he presented it to us. And he knew what he wanted for the agency. There was not any real haggling there. But part of that was buying office supply inventory. So he itemized that all out. And I found out that my dad was his banker for years. And what he figured out when he was in the bank one day was that the banks used a lot of paper clips. And he saw somebody threw a paperclip away. And he made a deal with the tellers and the new accounts person that any excess paperclips, he gave them a baggie and asked them to put the paperclips in that baggie. And he would come by once a week and he would get the baggie of paperclips so he didn't have to purchase paperclips for his office. He would then recycle those back to his office, and that's what his CSRs and staff would use.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Now we could turn that into a TikTok video
Sure.
and start a thing.
Sure.
But all of this said, so let's talk about loud budgeting and what that means for us as agency owners.
On the budgeting side, it just comes down to staying within your means. We can have a takeaway here of it's not trying to be something that you're not. That's not authentic. It is authentic and real if you're starting out as an agency. If you're still trying to grow your agency and you're just not financially where you want to be, there's something romantic a little bit about that. I'm a business guy. I love startups. I love entrepreneurship. Maybe I'm in love with just businesses being successful. Living within your means inside your business is attractive as a customer. Okay, they're going to be here. They're going to take care of me. Flaunting or being something that you're not, I've never been able to do that.
I've seen so many new agency owners, specifically agency owners that were producers, not so much independent agency owners that were coming out of the captive world, but producers that are starting their first agency. I see them spend money because they think their office is supposed to look like XYZ. And the term that's used on social a lot is delulu. So we've got delulu spending, which is short for delusional. And so you're going out, you're putting a second mortgage on your house, you're maxing out your credit cards to have this office that is decked out in this way that you think that your office should be. Now, let me just say, my mom's law office once won the ugliest office contest. A media group in town ran this ugliest office contest, and as a joke, my dad entered her in this, and my mom's office was a Hot Mess Express at this time, and she won the ugliest office contest. And so this office furniture company came in and replaced all of her office furniture, and Sherwin-Williams came in and painted everything. But what was really funny was when her clients came back in afterwards, return clients, they were like, everything's so fancy in here now. And one of the reasons that people loved Mom's office, it was comfortable. And they didn't feel like they had to get dressed up and feel uncomfortable to go to the lawyer's office because it was just like anybody else's office and her file cabinet was dented. And so I get if you're going after super high net worth clients, etc. But if you're just delulu spending because you think your office is supposed to be fancy and that's going to make you successful, then yeah, you're probably delulu.
Where you're located in your market area is probably going to come into play here. We do have nice offices, I believe, but we didn't always. Where we are today isn't always where we were. And we have nice offices. We do not have luxurious or extreme. It comes down to where you're at. It's also post-COVID. So let's remember that there's not a lot, especially personal lines agents, there's not a lot of agents, unless you're in a small community, who have customers walking in their office. So if you're dressing up your office for something, especially delulu or over the top something, it's one thing to be professional. It's another thing to be over the top. Then you're doing it for yourself or your people, which could be fun. That's okay. If you want to put some TVs on the wall, you want to dress some stuff up, you want to have some things going on, great. But you're in post-COVID world, and a lot of your customers aren't coming in your office, and a few of your carrier reps may come into your office, but a lot of those guys have decided it's more efficient for them to do video calls, and they can be more frequent with Teams meetings and Zoom calls than they can coming out physically into your office. And so why are you doing it? Why are you spending that money?
I will never get this trend of spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a purse. I just don't get it. And this sounds nuts, but I want to have a really nice leather bag with nobody else's name or initials on it. And that shouldn't be hard to find. And it is. It's absolutely crazy. This whole concept of loud budgeting is coming out at a really significant time, mainly because things are just becoming out of control expensive and wages are stagnating a little bit. And I love that our Gen Zs and our millennials are just welcoming the chance to be able to say that it's hard and sometimes it's absolutely impossible. With this idea of keeping up with the Joneses or keeping this perfect presence on social media. And I love that they're actually on social sharing videos, sharing tips about how to save money, how to change habits. This sounds like such a simple thing. One of the big ones is saying, if you're going out, only do dinner or drinks, but don't do both. Or don't try to order the salad and the soup and the dinner and the dessert. Cut back on one or two of those things. And that seems like it is such a no-brainer, but when you're with a group of people, when you're feeling the financial pressure of today's world, that really strikes a chord.
Yeah, as a parent, father of young 20-somethings starting out, and the cost of starting out in life today is really high. It's challenging, and that's probably rooted in this trend. It's like they've been given permission, they being the Gen Zs and even the millennials, they've been given permission to think that it's okay to not have to overspend, or certainly not to spend beyond your means and go in debt on that. I love that because they're going to end up in such a better place 10 years down the road. Long gone are the days where we celebrate the HGTV House Hunters episode where she's a social worker, he's a community organizer and their budget is $2.4 million. There was nothing in those HGTV House Hunter or House Hunter International shows that ever made sense. They either had to be trust fund babies or there's a disconnect because the occupations never matched the budgets. And so we normalized that 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Shame on us as a society. We normalized and maybe made it the expectation that $1 million homes or even $500,000 homes at the age of 22 is normal. And that's not normal. I blame a little bit of this on college housing. The housing that's being developed in and around these major universities that is being rented out by the bedroom, the kitchens in these houses are incredible. Marble top, incredible cabinets, full-blown kitchens, crown molding. These are not college houses, but they're renting these things out by the bedroom, and we as parents are putting our children into these places. Some of these situations is we're just bypassing the dorms altogether and going straight into the house with some roommates. The expectation that we're creating at that point is that when I graduate from college, I should be able to afford a house like this. I should be able to afford a house like mom and dad's. Never mind the fact that it took mom and dad 15 years to get that house. But I'm 23 and I have a degree and I'm getting my first job and I should be able to go afford a $450,000, $500,000 house. That's not normal. That's dumb. To be blunt about it, it's just not normal. The Gen Z millennials are feeling some relief, maybe, with a trend like this to be able to say, oh, thank God, we don't have to do it this way. We can do it a different way.
From a marketing perspective, this is a fantastic way for you to connect with millennials and with Gen Zs, but you have to do it in an authentic way. This cannot be one of those things that if you are taking to socials and saying, this is what you need to do, that's not going to work. It needs to look more like, this is what I am doing, and use it almost as accountability. That's one of the reasons that this idea is really taking off in the last 6 weeks or so, is because it's fantastic. I can tell you the story when I moved into the Shreveport, Louisiana market, and it took everything in my savings to make that move, and getting the new place and getting all the utilities turned on, and it really depleted everything that was in my bank accounts. And my coworkers decided that we were going to go out to dinner and celebrate. And we went to a restaurant called Ernest in Shreveport that's very expensive. And I didn't know that when there weren't prices on the menu, that meant it was really expensive, because it didn't seem like a real fancy place to me. And when I got my bill and it was over $200, and this was several years ago, it was one of those moments of, oh crap, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent because my rent's going to come due before I get paid again, and I don't know what to do. So what do you do? And it is one of those things that now I love the fact that I'm actually seeing people say, hey, I looked at the menu ahead of time and I realized that I couldn't afford it, and was able to say, hey, I can't do this. I can't afford to go to dinner at this place. Let's go to XYZ instead. Providing those options, being able to say, hey, I can't do it, is an accountability. And it's allowing people to encourage other people rather than feeling like disappointments they can't do it. It's, hey, let's do this together. If you support me financially, I'm going to support you.
Yeah, I love it. Early on, one of the things that I did do right as a parent, there were many that I didn't, but one of the things I did right was, as a girl dad, I did teach my daughters the restaurant pricing scenario. I gave them, I said, okay, there's 3 scenarios I want you to be aware of when it comes to restaurant pricing. There's the restaurants that have dollars and cents. The next level restaurant is the restaurant that has no cents. It just has a dollar figure. The steak is $35 or whatever. You're in a fairly high-end restaurant. You went from Shoney's to Ruth's Chris. And I said, then there's another level that I want you to be really aware of. And I said, it's the restaurant that has the menu that doesn't have prices at all. And they were very confused. What would that be? And I'm like, that's the restaurant that if you have to ask, you need to get up and leave. If that's the menu, there aren't any prices, then you need to get up and leave. If that's where you find yourself, because if you don't know if you can afford it, you probably can't. I'm laughing inside because I remember the look on their faces when I was telling them this. And I kid you not, when my oldest was in college, she was asked out on a date and they went on a date and the menu didn't have any sense. It was just the rounded price. And she sent me a pic of the menu and said, I'm at level 2 tonight. And she was just like, there is a price on the menu, Dad. So I know exactly what I'm getting into here. And anyway, it stuck with me, and it was something that stuck with my kids. It's really important that we have this reference and we teach our kids that.
One of the things that makes this so odd for some Gen Xers and especially for boomers is a lot of people in those two generations were taught that it was gauche to talk about money, that you didn't acknowledge that money was a thing. You never shared how much money you made. You never shared what you could afford. It was all about this presentation that you were supposed to have. And so the idea of loud budgeting for a lot of people is TMI. Too much information. You shouldn't be sharing that. And that's what's making this surprisingly effective and something that our Gen Zs are really being able to grab a hold of. It is so different than what their parents and their grandparents did when it comes to money. Now, I'm not going to say I don't like nice things because you know me and you know that I love nice things. But I don't know, do you know that I'm a thrift shopper?
I did not.
Today, I am wearing a cashmere sweater. I'm not going to tell you that I'm not, but I'm also going to tell you that I got that cashmere sweater at a consignment shop on the clearance rack because I knew what it was. I knew what to look for. I got this 100% 2-ply cashmere sweater for $7.98. And so I love nice things, but I don't pay for them. And somebody will make a comment about something that are like, oh my gosh, I love that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to be like, oh, I got this on clearance at TJ Maxx. It's $11. And so I'm going to usually maybe even do a version of this because I love to help people save money. And I'm like, you don't have to spend $2,000 on a purse if you know how to shop. We're not saying don't have nice things. Y'all have a nice vehicle. We have a nice vehicle. We both have nice homes. But I would be willing to bet that if y'all are anything like us, and I would think that y'all are, you've purchased them over time and you looked for items that were on sale and, trying to make sure that the things that you have fit the lifestyle you want, but still fit in your budget.
Yeah, I mean, we spent 9 years in a starter home, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,000 square feet frame house, saving to build our house. Now, when we built our house, we built a house. We agreed that we were going to overbuild a little bit and we were going to build a house that we would die in. We decided we did not want to be 9 years, 10 years here, 10 years in the next house. We didn't want to do the gradual step up. We were in a spot after almost 10 years of marriage where we had saved and we were in a spot where we could just go ahead. Interest rates were really low at the time. And we were fortunate that happened that way. And we were able to build a house that we actually never want to leave. And we still feel that way today, 20 years later. The reality of it was, though, that our house was not fully furnished when we moved into it. It took us a while to furnish the house out. You see it today, but you think it's always been where it is, but it's not. It wasn't. Day one, it was a different place. In year one of our 28-year marriage, it was a different place. We're 40 years old as an organization. We're 13 years old into our agency network. We have not always been where we are. We have 31 employees. 10 years ago, we had 18. 20 years ago, we had 8. It looked different. We looked different. We've grown up with the company and we've been blessed through our business, but we didn't look like this day one. And I've learned that I didn't have to look bigger or better or shinier 20 years ago just to get to the point of success in doing what we're doing. Nobody told me that. Everybody it just was assumed that you had to be a certain size, look a certain way in the business. And everybody gets caught up on this look bigger than you are, act bigger than you are. And I'm telling you in hindsight, don't. act your size. There's something great about it. And if you're just starting out, fine. If you're just starting out in a marriage or a new home, great. Be there, own it, live it. And there's something really good about that. That's really important because what we do, and especially like a Gen Z, back to that college housing thing, if you are in that situation or if you have a child in that situation, have that conversation to help them understand, hey, this was the best thing available. It's less expensive than you being in an apartment with one other person because you can be in a house with 4 other people and it's going to be $7 a month rent versus $1,200 in an apartment. But this house and the kitchen and the living room and the amenities of this home that you're living in college, don't expect this day one when you graduate college. It's almost like you go backwards. It's the same thing you hear about Power 5 Division I athletes in Division I baseball players. If you play at LSU and you are good enough to be drafted and you go to the minor leagues and they send you to A-ball, you went backwards. You don't have the facilities, the gear, the plane, bus is different in A-ball versus in the minor leagues versus your experience at LSU. It's a really good parallel comparison that says that's what it's going to look like if you're a college student and you're fortunate enough that you have parents or you have whatever that is providing you a place to live. You're probably going to go backwards into your first home, and that's okay because we learn so much and we can embrace things like loud budgeting, and it's awesome and it's cool. And I wish somebody would have told me that it was okay.
It's okay to not have granite countertops in your house until after 40. I survived. You can too.
Exactly. I don't know. I'm loving this loud budgeting trend because it feels like it's a course correction in a way.
We would love to know how you're embracing this idea of loud budgeting in your agency. Drop us a line at iaforward.com and let us know, and we'll do a follow-up. I'm going to leave us today with this quote from Carrie Walsh Jennings. It's going to be a journey. It's not a sprint to get into shape.
Attitude's a choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
Ready to get the ball rolling with your independent agency? Learn more at IntegraAgent.com. That's IntegraAgent.com. Thank you for joining us on IA Forward. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now or learn more at IAForward.com.